What's up, guys, and welcome to Why Girl Friends English.
So today we're going to talk about 8 terms or types of terms that you should not use in your writing for academics and business English. And these general tips are going to be super important for just upping the level of your writing.
We've had a lot of students fill their essays and their writings and their papers with a lot of redundant and just frankly inappropriate material that make it unacceptable.
So the idea is if you speak it, and this is what we actually say when we're speaking informally, then it's okay to put it in your writing. But that's honestly not the case. We have very specific rules in English for what can be in your business and academic writing and what cannot be. And honestly, as the internet has come in and texting and all of this technology, it has really made native speakers English, the way that they speak and write casually online, really watered down the way that they write in business English and in their academic English. So we're going to go over some of the rules. We are taught this very specifically, and we are counted off very strictly in schools when we write this way to help you guys avoid some of these mistakes.
Absolutely. So these are things you should not do in your writing.
Super informal things.
Right.
Yeah.
But in the next video, we're going to talk about things that are on the other side, which are just too formal for your writing.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't include those either. So subscribe to our channel so that you can get that notification when we put out that next video that's kind of an accompaniment to this video.
So the first things first is we don't use texting acronyms in our writing at all, in especially business writing. When I say business writing, I also mean emails. So business emails, we don't use it. Honestly, when I'm communicating on things like Slack and Microsoft Teams, I don't actually use them there either. However, it is kind of okay. That's kind of a gray area, to be honest.
Yeah.
It really depends on the context you're in. Some businesses are more lax and want a friendlier atmosphere, so they'll allow it. Others want things to be very professional and they won't allow it. So it really depends on the company in that case. However, business emails, you should not use texting acronyms.
Yeah.
So some of these include things like BRB, as in be right back.
GG for good game.
Or GM for good morning.
TY for thank you.
Yeah, or TGI Friday, so thank goodness it's Friday.
Or LOL for laugh out loud. Stuff like this. These are things that some people might even say when they're speaking, but
As
generally speaking, they're joking, and it's all about just texting lingo and texting acronyms.
Right.
And it's just not appropriate for writing whatsoever.
So the next one is texting lingo, which are things like dunno for I don't know, or gonna for I'm going to, or
I'm for I am going to. So these are ways that when we speak, sometimes I say I'm gonna do this. So you mimic the pronunciation. Again, it's speaking, the speaking skill, but it's wrongly translated into writing.
Right.
So when I speak, that is the right pronunciation. That if for like informal speaking, like if I'm talking to Amber, I'm going to say I'm gonna do this, but to say that skill also translates to writing is not appropriate.
Yeah. So definitely avoid doing that. It's very unprofessional and it gets redlined all the time in academics for sure. Definitely business as well. It just gives off this I don't care type of thing. Because if I'm pronouncing things that way, I'm very relaxed. I'm like, you're my equal. We are just going to just
hang out.
I don't know, man. Like things like this. But I would not talk to my boss that way. I don't talk to my boss that way. I don't say, I don't know. Okay, that's not appropriate. It doesn't show adequate respect for my boss. So same thing for you. You should definitely avoid it in your business writing.
The third one is no onomatopoeias. This is a hard word.
Fun word.
It's a really fun word. Onomatopoeia are sound words.
Yes.
So in business and academic writing, we don't use words like woof, uh-oh, stuff like that. Where in speaking, again, these make our speaking more colorful, but in our writing, it makes it unacceptable. If I write an email to my boss and I say,
uh-oh, I missed that one.
my boss is going to be like, what are you doing? Or if I say, I need some help with this, my boss is going to say, why'd you say, just say, I need some help with this.
Some bosses might fire you pretty quick, honestly, because it's very disrespectful.
It's supposed to be kind of cute, but in academic and business writing, it's not cute. It's unacceptable.
Yeah, you don't really want to be cute at work. You want to be capable and independent. That's not going to get you very far to act like that. Number 4, this one's a little tricky. This is when we use loads of idioms. Idioms are used to make our writing more colorful. We do use idioms in writing, and it would be very difficult to honestly write or communicate without them.
Yeah.
However, if you do idiom after idiom after idiom, or you mix idioms, like maybe you use a sports idiom, like he knocked it out of the park, and then you go over to it's raining cats and dogs, that doesn't make any sense. So if you're going to use multiple idioms, make sure that it is within the right context and don't mix up where they come from necessarily, because then you're switching metaphors.
Yeah.
And that gets to be too confusing and rather unprofessional. Very not polished for sure. But if you're going to use them, use a couple within one business email. I'd probably only use one, maybe. Yeah. If it's a longer one, maybe 2 is fine. But you don't want to do idiom after idiom after idiom.
The point of business and academic writing is clarity. And idioms, as colorful as they can be, sometimes they're not very clear.
If they're helpful to the demonstration, or if they're helpful to communicating in a more friendly way, that is okay. However, make sure it's an idiom that you already see used in the context, and make sure it's an idiom that accurately describes what you are trying to communicate. If it doesn't, then all you're doing is adding vagueness to your writing, and that does not help accomplish anything.
Which is the next one, which is don't use vague terms, like things like, I'll get to it sometime.
Yeah, or I did some things yesterday. If you write that to your boss, their immediate response is going to be, what things did you do? It's like, specifically name.
What was the point of the email if you're not going to tell me the things that you did, other than saying, I did some things? It's not giving me very much information.
If somebody within your company messages you and says, what times can you meet this week? You can't just respond any time. You need to respond with specifics. I mean, casually, I might say, yeah, anytime, when I have the paralanguage there to do this. Because otherwise what it's going to do is going to set off a series of messages back and forth. Well, what about this time? What about this time? What about this time? What they're asking for are specifics, so that they can choose what's available within your availability.
And even if that availability is all workday, Monday through Friday, that's fine, because then as the person who's asking the question, I know, okay, I can choose anytime. There's no going back. Okay, you said anytime. That means anytime that I can do it.
Anytime that they can do it, that they're in the same building with you, right, or at the same work desk with you. So the next one is going to be using local slang, which is okay if you work in a local context. Maybe it's okay. It really depends on how formal it is or informal it is. But if it's something that your company uses, slang within that company culture, that should be okay. I would still prefer not writing it, but that's up to you and whether you see it written all the time or not. Just know that whatever you say needs to be clear. Yeah. The problem with local slang is that if the local high schoolers see it and you hang out with the high schoolers, but then you go to work with people that don't have high schoolers in their homes, or they just don't use it, then there's going to be a miscommunication there. And they may or may not say something. They may ask you what it means or they may not. So just make sure that you are crystal clear. And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes you really don't know if it's local slang or not.
Yeah.
That's just part of the learning process. But make sure that you are trying to be as clear as possible without using too many words.
The goal is that the other person understands you. So if you use a phrase like it'll buff, you may know what that means, but they may not. The Chinese phrase that we heard a lot, which is no zuo no dai.
We didn't know what that meant for the longest time.
They knew what it meant, but we didn't know what it meant, so there was no communication. So that's the problem with using local slang. So the next one is using curse words in your academic and business writing.
This one's difficult because maybe you and your coworkers curse with one another. There's a time and a place for this. Business writing is not the time and the place.
Right.
You should not use it. There are blogs out there that do use curse words. There are music and all kinds of media out there that use curse words. But you should not be using it yourself when you're communicating in a business or academic context.
Right.
In terms of schools, back when we were in school, it was, you get detention for using curse words in your writing.
Yeah.
In university, it would have been very disrespectful to do so. The idea is that it's disrespectful. It's too casual. And it shows a disregard or a disrespect of the person you're speaking to. In our culture, in American culture, you don't curse at your parents.
Yeah.
You don't speak to them or communicate something to them. Even if you're not cursing at them, you shouldn't curse around them.
Yeah.
And it's just this idea of respect. And so in the business context, the academic context, this should also carry forward.
Yeah.
You should not be cursing in a context where you are with superiors.
Even superiors should not do that. If there are employees that get emails from their boss and the boss is writing curse words in his emails, it's a big deal. Like, it's a huge deal because the boss is saying that's okay, and it's not. And
it's culturally, it's still odd and taboo. But there are businesses that are implementing this to be more edgy, but it's one of those things that it's still more edgy because it's taboo in our culture. So you definitely don't want to curse around your boss. Don't curse around your superiors. Don't curse around your teachers. And definitely don't write them.
Sadly, this happens a lot in our homework that we grade, is that a lot of students, they think that they understand the implications of the word, but that we just don't use it in writing.
Some curse words carry a much heavier weight than others, and so some of them think they can use it like people use it on social media, but they don't understand some people on social media use a very, very harsh curse word on purpose in a playful way, trying to communicate something entirely different than the ESL student understands.
Absolutely.
And so they try to throw that word around just needlessly or lightly as that person used it, but they don't understand the weight that comes behind it. So you want to be very careful around how to use these words, and you want to really understand the context and the culture of them. The next one is a big pet peeve of mine because one of my jobs for years was to fix this, but it is redundant phrases in your writing.
In spoken English, these are a cheap way to emphasize what you mean to say. So, for example,
add an additional item to the list. You have add and additional, which mean the same thing, phrase.
And etc.
Ask the question. Reply back. This one is really common.
I'll reply back to you by tomorrow. You don't have to say back. You can just say reply. I'll reply by tomorrow.
That is not a normal phrasal verb. It's not a phrasal verb. People just use it.
Yeah.
Connect together. I mean, obviously, togetherness is going to happen, so the connect doesn't make sense. Some of these are going to be kind of odd because I know from an ESL standpoint, some of these sound like phrasal verbs. But the trick is understanding when these are going to be redundant phrases and what you should not use in writing. And again, this is, like Josh said, a cheap way to add emphasis or mini parallelisms in your speech to help grab your listener's attention. It works informally, and it works even semi-formally. But if you notice, if you listen to formal speeches, they don't say this. And they don't say it because redundant phrases are adding extra words. They're not punchy at all. They water things down in a cheap attempt to get people to listen more to, hey, this is a turning point. You didn't hear me the first time, so here's the second word to help get your attention. A lot of people, unfortunately, even Americans, carry this into their writing. It is not appropriate most cases, and honestly, a lot of people will hire a proofreader like me to edit all of that out. So make sure that you try to avoid these. And honestly, to help you guys out with that, because those are very tricky to find, we have attached an excellent article on 164 words and phrases you should not use in your writing. Now, this was designed for essays, but it holds true for the business context as well. So definitely check that out. There's a link down in the description. We are not sponsors in any way. We're not affiliates in any way. I just came across this as I was writing the words for this video, and I was like, yes, this is excellent. So definitely a great handy sheet of charts for you guys to check out and learn from.
And these redundant phrases, they are really important because it draws out the point that you guys need to be looking for quality input, not just any input. Don't go on to all the free resources, because some of them will tell you a redundant phrase is appropriate when in certain contexts it's not.
Yeah. Quality is definitely better than quantity when it comes to writing professionally or writing in business context or writing in academic context. It needs to be quality choice of words, and it needs to be quality sentence structure overall, and it also needs to be very to the point. This was not always the case. We used to have the passive tense as used all the time in business writing, but honestly that is moving out, and we will get to that in the video later this week. So there's definitely a time and a place for casual writing. This is what we were talking about. Things like BRB and stuff like that. These are casual writing. These are texts instant messaging, even social media in some cases.
Maybe blogs.
Maybe even some magazines. Like there are places for these. However, it is not going to be in your business emails, and it's not going to be in academic writing, because your writing needs to be crystal clear in meaning and communication.
That's the point that we're trying to get across, is that you need to write for the context that you are in. If you're in a business world, write for the business world. If you're in an informal lifestyle blog, okay, then you write in that context. That's the skill of a writer, is that they can figure out the context and write for that context. All right, guys, that's it, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Bye.